I'm sure everyone can remember their retail days. The periods of our lives when we worked long hours for shit pay and at the mercy of every dickhead who felt a soy sauce shortage was a legitimate reason to ruin somebody's shift. I'm still unfortunately eyeballs deep in that phase of my life. I sure wish that soccer moms with bad haircuts or thumb-shaped juice heads with little man syndrome were the biggest of my problems. We all make jokes about working retail being hell. Some even compare it to purgatory, a between space where time passes at a painstaking crawl. It's nothing compared to this. I had my back pressed against a cold refrigerator in the showroom. I was starting to get the hang of this fucked up version of hide and seek. I could hear a subtle but distinct clicking of the creature as it made its way up the aisles, meticulously searching. It knew I was here. I could see the arc of its back over high shelves and its gangly limbs clinging to the beams to keep its balance. I held my hands over my mouth and tried to steady my breath as the creature advanced. A vicious sludge oozed from its skin, sounding like tar when it dropped to the floor. The sludge eating away at everything it touched like a corrosive piranha solution. It smelled like hot floor at a dumpster fire, like burnt hair, warm beer, and melted plastic, with a nose-curling sourness of spoiled food. It was getting too close for comfort this time. The refrigerators rattled as I saw a meaty clawed hand the size of a large dog cling to their tops, followed by the sound of ragged breath. The smell grew heavier as the hand slapped from one fridge to another until it settled atop of mine. It sat there just long enough to wonder if I had been found before it, along with the smell, vanished entirely. Oh, thank God. I waited for my heart to move from hammering in my throat to back in my chest. I peeked my head out from behind the fridge to see no one. I was alone again. Management nearly got you this time, man. Or at least I thought I was. I about pissed myself and quickly turned around to find a mannequin standing within shoe-throwing distance in an ugly sweater and a pair of fitted khakis. Fred, Jesus Christ, I told you to start announcing yourself. I mean, I could have, but you would have ended up at Show's lunch. I know what everyone would be thinking right about now. This guy is hiding from monsters and talking to mannequins. He's probably nuts. And yeah, you'd probably be right. But consider this first. I work retail. I deserve to be crazy, so reserve all judgments for now. The mannequin, Fred, swung his body from side to side, stiffly waddling over to me. She got Juan, poor bastard didn't even see her coming, he said. Fred looked like a life-size Ken doll and spoke with a New York accent. His mouth never moved though. It was permanently fixed into a smile, filled with a row of perfectly straight, white-painted teeth. But his eyes, those moved. They seemed to follow you. It was like one of those creepy old paintings where the eyes seemed to track you around the room no matter where you went. It was a little creepy. I kinda liked Juan. He didn't give me as many stink eyes as all the others. Well, he ain't got no eyes to stink with anymore. Squashed like a watermelon, 'cause splat! Cheryl didn't even stop to look at him. Ugh. Hey, better him than us. Us. It won't eat you. It would be like eating a plastic bead, I said as I began to reface the water filters. I mean, yeah, but I would give her indigestion if she ever does. How noble of you. If Fred had been endowed with the gift of face muscles, he'd probably be wearing a shit-eating grin. It ain't easy being a hero. I listened again to see if Cheryl was still around. Can never be too careful with manager 5 ears to the ground, Cheryl. The screams in the distance told me it was somewhere in household chemicals, which meant there was around 4 miles of store between us. That's far enough. The housecape where I work is called ThetaMart. It was supposed to be a super shopping centre, best described as if a mall in Costco had a baby. But this baby was unfortunately disfigured so horribly it broke and disregarded the laws of the reality we live in. All that to say, ThetaMart is like a retail affair baby if H.P. Lovecraft was the mistress. It's full of impossible creatures, monsters, and products an insane person couldn't even conjure in their strangest fever dreams. Everything inside ThetaMart was white. A stark, sterile white from floor to ceiling, with shelves that stand several tall men high. There's a lingering smell of cheap plastic in here, and the only thing piercing the constant mind-numbing silence is the distant sound of tiny elevator music. It comes from everywhere and nowhere all at once. The tune feels so familiar, just not enough to place or follow. If that wasn't chilling enough, the screams that abruptly break the silent hours when management is close by is frightening enough to start the heart of a dead man. Which is why it was so strange when, first, a momentary blanket of silence fell over the store like what they do for memorials. It was an oppressive, drawn-out silence before being broken by a voice erupting from invisible speakers.
Max, there's a call waiting for you on.
The page was followed by a shrill garble that sounded like Jabba the Hutt was choking on rocks before it was silent again. I look at Fred. What the fuck was that? You got a page, man. You gotta answer it. How? There's no phone in this department. The nearest working phone that I knew of was in electronics, which was about 6 or so miles away. I just cut my losses and throw myself from the highest shelf. There's no way I'd make it without being maimed or eaten before I get there. As absurd as this place is, I don't think treeking over toys and finding a Play School Elmo and Friends smartphone would cut it either. Well, it won't stop paging you until you answer it. And trust me, you're gonna want to answer it. What happens if I don't? He doesn't respond, and instead stares at me silently for a moment. Hello? He lunges forward and snatches my phone. Hey! I swiped to get it back, but Fred was quick for a guy with limited mobility. Sorry, pal. You'll thank me later. He began to speed waddle away. I actually had to run after him to keep up, which was impressive considering how his legs only moved in 2 directions. Fred, I can't leave without my... He disappeared, heading deeper into the store. Man, considering the short time I've been here, I've learned a lot about this place and how it operates. Sort of. In the grand scheme of things, I probably know absolutely dipsquat. Because of these dubious guidelines, I've made it far enough to share this. 1. Stay away from the other associates. They may look like people or potential survival partners, perhaps the last anchor you could hold steadfast to insanity with, but they are absolutely, definitely not. Far from it. Avoid them at all costs. They might have been human once, but they certainly aren't anymore. 2. The areas that turn yellow, or the zones of the store that are more decrepit than the other areas, are more prone to management activity. That's what Cheryl is. The denizens of this place are known as management. The higher the status, the nastier they are. 3. Be sure to follow the first 2 rules, no matter what. It makes life a lot easier. Funny enough, Fred actually bestowed upon me a lot of the knowledge I've accumulated about this place, which pissed me off even more when I had to actively choose to break those 3 rules. Fred, this isn't funny. I don't have time for your crap. I continued walking at a brisk pace, following the distant taps of hollow dress shoes. All around me, the fluorescent lights became yellower, more tarnished. They flicker and hum overhead, and some are blown out completely. There are pillows and overturned furniture, soggy boxes and broken glass strewn about the linoleum. The smell of stale old couch stuffing and mildew penetrated the air and hung like a wet blanket, making it slightly uncomfortable to breathe. I walked beneath the hanging sign saying in bold blue letters, "Home and Decor." Oh crap. I found myself reconsidering how important my phone really was. I could just buy a new one. Sure, the other one isn't even paid off yet, but is it really worth being eaten or squashed or whatever it is monsters do to people? A scrawny college student sustained purely of ramen and espresso can't taste that good, right? Just when I talked myself into abandoning my phone with every puppy pic of my dog I've ever taken, I felt eyes fixed on me. I had been spotted. Maxwell. Shit. I very slowly turn around to find looming over me was Nosferatu. Well, he's not actually Nosferatu, but he could have had me fooled if this were a spirited Halloween. Ralph, you look, alive today? Ralph's skin clung to his skeletal frame like wet toilet paper. The white of his eyes were as sunken and yellow as the lights around us, and his apron, identical to mine, covered in various stains of several concerning colors. I tried my best not to stare at them as he leaned down and hovered close to my face. His irises glistened a gross milky white with something swirling behind their film. "Why are you in my department, Maxwell?" Now would have been an amazing time to be great at lying, but I wasn't much of a talker at the best of times. I was getting... My eyes began to frantically dart around for a sign or... Milk! Milk? Yeah, milk. Can't have my bones breaking on the job, right? I made an attempt at a playful punch, but Ralph was so much squishier than he should have been. I felt my stomach lurch when my fist sunk through his arm and into his torso like a damn slime-filled stress ball. Except instead of alleviating stress, he makes it so much worse. He stared at me for a moment in unimpressed silence. Ralph was a supervisor. Not only that, but I managed to piss him off twice in my first week. Needless to say, he's far from my biggest fan. He also makes me really uncomfortable. You are heading in the wrong direction. Oh, really? Oh, I'm still getting turned around. 3 weeks and I still have no sense of direction. Typical Max. I took a step back. Well, I better be on my way now. Looks like I've got ways to walk. I'll call for assistance. Nope. Why's that? You're gross. He said nothing. I mean, grossly understaffed. You look like you're barely holding on with these dang staff shortages, right? I don't want to impose. Nailed it. He continued eyeballing me for a tiny eternity. All I could do was stand there and sweat. Maybe if I didn't move, he would leave, like a T-Rex. Unfortunately, Ralph didn't follow predatory chicken rules. He took a step back and very, very slowly started to open his mouth. It stretched and cracked like the Conjuring house with osteoporosis. His teeth were rotting and twisted, and his tongue was a sickly purple color. If I wasn't running on 3 hours of sleep and 2 Red Bulls, I probably would have started screaming like a kid in a haunted Chuck E. Cheese. Just as Ralph took an impressively deep breath to shriek or howl or whatever awful sounds supervisors make to summon managers, I saw my phone fly out of seemingly nowhere with the momentum of a bullet. It twirled wildly like an ISO throwing star and very effectively caved in the right side of Ralph's face. He fell on the floor with a tragic plopping sound that reminded me of a soggy banana peel landing in a puddle. Booyah! Fred sprung out from behind a love seat and started doing an awkward victory dance. I should have tried out for the Yankees. Hopefully you've got some reflexes to go with that throwing arm. You're lucky I don't do the same for you running off with my phone. Ah, come on, Maxie. I had to get you moving somehow. I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned down and plucked my phone from Ralph's caved-in dome. It came free with a moist snick. Thankfully, there was no grey matter or blood, just a gross and slightly greasy film where his skin and my phone made contact. If I have to touch one more bodily excretion that isn't mine, one more time this week. Fred slowly stuck his foot into Ralph's side and laughed when the old man made a sound like a deflated sponge cake. You get used to it. Now, let's get this show back on the road. No. I need to go back to appliances where it's safe. I haven't even been over here for 5 minutes and Ralph was already trying to hand me a pink slip from life. Fred somehow managed to blow a raspberry without his lips moving and pat my shoulder. He wishes he had the clearance to do that. All he can do is hoop and holler. Ain't that right, Ralphie? Ralph, now drooling, said nothing and only continued to make more squishy, deflating sounds. Is he okay? Oh yeah, I saw him get crushed by a shelf once. He's even been sat on by Bonnie, and he still got up. He was totally fine too. I'm sure he enjoyed getting sat on more though, sly dog. Wow. I know, right? He's all about that bass. Respect that. Ooh, no. I mean, does he just not die, or does he not have bones? He looked back down at Ralph and then back at me. Well, he's got something. How the heck did he get a squash-proof card? Ha! What, you want one too? Trust me, you don't want whatever he's got. Shit, it's probably terminal. What's that mean? Fred did something like he was trying to shrug, trying and failing. He also had the nerve to take another swipe at me in an attempt to grab my phone again. I quickly stuck my phone in the air and slapped his plastic hand away. Hey! God, you're worse than a 3-year-old today. What the hell, man? I've seen Fred do some pretty weird stuff, aside from the living mannequin thing. All it took was a fraction of a second for me to blink for Fred to be gone with my fucking phone again. I looked at my empty hand, then over my shoulder at him, booking it down the aisles. Just before I could sputter the creative string of swear words I had threaded together just for Fred's ears, the store was plunged into silence again. Oh no. It lasted a few seconds longer than before.
Max, there is a call waiting for you on.
The horrible sound it made was louder, so much louder this time. I slapped my hands over my ears. I could feel the sound vibrating in my chest. It only lasted for a moment, but that's all it took to leave me with an annoying ring in my ears. So, that's what he meant. Now, begrudgingly, coming to terms that this shift was going to probably be a very dangerous trek across the store, I looked back at the now deflated Ralph. Within moments of being clocked with my phone, he looked like a snake was running around in a human suit, and he shed him at some point. I almost wanted to feel bad, but he was a dick, and I thought better of it. Instead, I opted to start going through his pockets. Let's see. Food tokens, box cutter, and some new blades. I'm sure those will come in handy. I had made the mistake of losing my pocket knife on my first day to the disembodied appendages that live under the shelves in aisle 12 and 16. Don't ask. That is a story for another time. I clicked up the blade and the thing extended to almost 4 inches long. How many newbies like me have you used this thing on, Ralph? 'Cause I certainly haven't seen you open any boxes. I stood, gave him one last squishy nudge with my foot, and then went to find that stupid mannequin. The home decor apartment almost reminded me a bit of a decrepit thrift store. The musty smell of old used things and old used people. Ralph fitted in perfectly with the washed-out background that was bathed in piss yellow. But I also couldn't help but wonder, why did this side of the store look as awful as it did? There were even water stains on the fiberglass ceiling tiles way up above. Everything I've seen in the store looked awful in some capacity, but the level of awfulness here was borderline ridiculous. My job had me stuck in different departments every shift, something referred to as a floater. Basically, I was being trained in a bit of everything. The one who hired me told me that I would have this position until I found my place. I thought that statement was strange because I was only supposed to be here for about 3 months. At one point, I was certain I would stay longer. $20 an hour for a retail gig sounded like cake, but now I find myself wondering if I'll even last that long. You've been standing there for an awfully long time, Maxwell. It was a woman's voice. My attention snapped back into the moment so hard I nearly got whiplash. Wet and broken glass crunched under my feet as I spun. I pulled out my new box cutter, holding it out in front of me. It's Max, and a guy can't take a second to collect his thoughts. Sure you can, but standing in the middle of an aisle, muttering to yourself, might be considered a little crazy, wouldn't you say? A massive spider, as big as a Volkswagen Beetle, slowly peered over the shelves that had been covered in ugly pillows and rested atop of it. She had a shiny black body and long, sharp legs that still shimmered like obsidian spears in the low light and easily extended around 17 feet. Her 8 eyes were a deep red, and her front 2 legs ended in unmistakably human hands with manicured nails. Janice, from what I understand, is one of the vendors. She's also one of the few creatures in here I don't find myself running and screaming from, shockingly. She's just kind of a bitch. Considering the things that go on here, I'm not exactly concerned with what people think of me, I say, slowly aiming the box cutter away. Oh, not enjoying your position? You seemed so enthusiastic a few weeks ago. Why in God's name do you think I would be having fun in this place? And I had no idea the shit I'd have to deal with a few weeks ago. This is entrapment. It's illegal. Janice tapped her perfectly maintained nails against the metal shelves like an irritated Disney villain, making annoying tink sounds. Still on that, are we? You're not the brightest, are you? But a busted, broke college student down on his luck with $5 to his name. People like you thrive in extreme situations. You adapt. No. People who get thrown into shit like this die. Well, seeing how you were hired here, no one will miss you if you do. Ouch. It's true. I know it's true, but you didn't have to say it like that. ThetaMart, as well as being a space between, has the ability to bring out something in people they would rather not look at. It changes them into something more. She looked at a moldy pillow sitting beside her on the shelf. She huffed while pushing it away, and it went tumbling to the floor with a wet. More compelling, I'd say. You get to break the monotony and forget how small you are. I'm perfectly comfortable with how small I am, thanks. What a winner. I'm sure your girlfriend shares the same sentiment. That's a bold assumption. And was there a point to you grudge calling up there, or are you just trying to harass me? I like having the high ground, and I wanted to give you a bit of friendly advice. Well, don't leave me in suspense, Obi-Wan. Who's that? He's... never mind. What is it? She sighed and slowly lowered herself down the shelf, creaking under her weight as she did, so she lowered her voice to a whisper. Don't eat the food. What? She hissed this time, speaking a little louder. Do not eat the food. I didn't want to sound like a broken record, but I was really confused. What? "Ah, you insufferable little man. This is why I am a widow. Forget it." She sighed and rubbed her 8 eyes. "The mannequin wanted me to pass this on to you." She pulled out a pair of pink flower clippers from seemingly nowhere. "Go to Garden and Live Goods. He's waiting for you there. Avoid the big flower." She handed me the clippers and tissed, "Dumbass." Thanks, I guess." I eyed the clippers. They made a satisfying snipping sound when I pulled the handles. "Don't mention it." In typical spider fashion, she creeped back up the shelf and disappeared over the other side. If every spider is as rude as she is, I don't know if I feel quite as bad as I used to when I would bring a shoe down on them. I stuck the clippers into my apron and began to head in the direction I was pretty sure was the garden. It's funny to think that just a year ago or so, going to the grocery store was comparable in enjoyment to going to a bookstore. Hell, it was almost as exciting as going to a water park some weeks because it was just being out. Now, I'd give just about anything to lock myself in my apartment and never leave again. After walking for what felt like hours, which was in reality probably around 30 to 45 minutes, I found myself among the shelves with strange boxes on them, and some of the ugliest shoes I had ever seen. They were all different colors and sizes, like someone had just hit the randomize button on a shoe generator and hoped for the best. To make matters stranger, the ones on display had chains on them. I slowly approached a large Pepto-Bismol pink stiletto. It stood about a bookshelf tall and had a whole very alive flamingo for a heel. The flamingo looked at me but didn't move. This is really weird. The one beside it had a large ugly sign that had "Hike Storm, Bring the Thunder," and the shoe sat floating on its pedestal. It looked like a cloud that was raining and letting off little veins of lightning. I have to admit, I would probably wear those. I found myself wondering who or what could have designed these. Someone would have had to, but I suppose things just appearing out of the ether wouldn't be the strangest thing happening here. I continued to browse the strange shoe zoo. Some shoes were just cardboard cutouts, some were fifth dimensional, and some were vicious puddles of gunk somehow holding itself into a shoe shape. It wasn't until I heard a low growl and the rattle of metal did I realize what the chains were really for. "Apex Collection," said a sign, posted by a pair of pumas that were not only the size of literal pumas, but behaved like pumas too. The giant shoes were attached to predatory cat legs, and attached to those were very large claws. They swiped and hissed at me as I quickly made my way past. The ruckus they were making must have woken up the other shoes as I began to quicken my pace down the aisle. I started hearing barking, the boxes on the shelves began to rattle, and some lost their lids. The shoes were peering out of them while snarling and yapping at me, like a ton of angry little leather dogs. Some even started chasing me, little sharp teeth bared. I broke into a sprint once I was able to move past how perplexed I was with the situation. The little beasts were fast, almost too fast for me to outrun, and they began nipping at my heels. One even managed to bite my leg, and I couldn't help but wonder if that meant I'd turn into a wereshoe too at some point. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Once I could see the edge of the shoe department and started to see the woman's apparel, I dove and slid, aiming for a rack. I slipped across the linoleum like a baseball player. When I came out the other side, I was somewhere else entirely. It was dark here and cold. I almost preferred the shoe section more. I had no idea what department I was in now, if I was in one at all. Something about this place took my anxiety and cranked it up to a 15, as if it weren't already bad enough. It was so quiet I couldn't even hear the music that played over the speakers anymore. ThetaMart is a massive store. There's only one map of this place, and it's by the entrance. This entrance is something I've only seen twice since I've been here, and according to the map of the store, it stretches miles upon miles in every direction, which also means, God forbid, someone loses something or someone in here. It'd be like looking for a straw of hay in a needle stack. Wherever I had just appeared had no familiar landmarks, which meant I was very, very lost. The shelves here stretched high past the light beams and climbed up into the inky darkness that hung overhead. The store started to look slightly warped. The tiles weren't a square, and the floor felt like it was slanted in an upward angle in some places or downward in others. The shelves, as well as gargantuan, also housed boxes labeled with no language known to man. Began to lean and curve. I tried my best to keep walking, to not peek over my shoulder every few steps. If there was something behind me, I'd prefer not know. Fred. My voice, barely over a whisper, only met with silence. It was heavy, oppressive silence, the kind of silence that leaves your ears ringing, the kind of silence humans spend hundreds of years trying to forget about and fill with the sounds of electricity, a primal silence. If I had my phone, I would have put in my earbuds and put on some music or an audiobook. Hell, I'd even settle for white noise. And until now, I thought it was creepier than quiet. Wherever I was, even the tap of my sneakers against the white tiles was being drowned out somehow. I wanted to start yelling, but I was afraid of what could be lurking in the spaces where the lights couldn't touch. My voice didn't peak over a choked whisper, that fear response you get as a child the first time you get lost in a grocery store was setting in. The fear that you'll never see your family again. You'll be trapped here forever. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home and hide in my room where it's familiar, where it's safe. The loudest thing here was very, very quickly becoming my intrusive thoughts. It's funny, in a fucked up sort of way, how the human brain will just pick some of the greatest hits from your childhood when there are no real distractions. But I guess this one was appropriate. It fell into place like a cylinder built to fall seamlessly into a slot. I had only been lost in a store once in my life, but it's easily one of my most vivid memories. My dad had actually forgotten me there. An old mom and pop store called the Farmer's Stand. I was stuck, wandering around for almost 3.5 hours until the old woman who owned the place brought me to the police station when she saw me eating a loaf of bread right off the shelf. I wouldn't see him again until I was standing beside his casket. The sight of him being lowered into the ground, it had become a stain on my mind since the moment my all too young eyes watched as it was lowered into a deep, dark hole. A void in the floor. I don't want to say it appeared because that implies it was created. It was a space of nothingness in the floor, inches from my feet. The powerful bang of a shotgun barrel going off rolled like thunder from the spontaneously appearing floor void. My heart leaped into my throat and I fell backwards, ass first, forcing myself to move and crab crawl away from whatever it was. The silence had been preparing my ears to take the brunt of the truly deafening sound. I sat for a moment, frozen like a frightened livestock, my breath hitched in my throat, my heart pounding so hard it made it almost painful to breathe. "Math," a gargled voice spoke from the void. "Math, where are you? I'm sorry." The voice sounded strange, like it was struggling to speak, but didn't have the tools to craft enunciated words. A bloodied hand slapped against the lid of the hole. The hand clasped onto the floor so hard it shook. The hand was purple, with nails practically shredded and raised from scratching against something. Around the third finger, a familiar golden band. I began to see spots in the corners of my vision. No, it's not possible. This isn't happening. I'm losing my mind. A human form rose from the hole. It wore a black fitted tux and had dark brown hair caked in blood. Brains and bone fragments shook loose as it pulled itself from the void. "Math, I am..." The shotgun gripped in their right hand hit the tile with a loud crack. What was barely a man rose from the void, heaving wet and ragged gasps. All I could do was sit and watch in horror as my father stood before me, his face blown to pieces and dripping onto his shoes like a mask made of chewing gum. "I am sorry." The malformed words echoed from the only discernible hole left in his head. It was full of broken teeth and mangled tongue, his jaw swinging like a tattered flag at the lower half of the head, shaped crater where not even eyes or sockets were left. The sound of my father's voice, his decimated face and broken stride as he now slowly limped towards me, was too much. Something about the image in front of me pulled a loose thread in the back of my mind, pulling me back into a moment of pain and confusion when my aunt and uncle sat me down and told me, "Your father ate the barrel, Max. That's how he died. He had given up on me." The all-too-real phantom took his gun and clumsily raised it towards me. aiming it so my eyes pointed right down its double barrel. He choked again, repeating the same disjointed drivel he had been spouting.
I
Dad, please don't, was all I could say. I heard a click, followed by a metallic chink. I didn't know what gun made those sounds, but I knew what would come next. I closed my eyes and waited.
Max, there's a call waiting for you on.
A brilliant pain erupted in my head with the sound of the page. The sound was so loud I could feel it in the floor beneath me and rattled in my skull. The bass of the horrible sound shook me down to the marrow. I could feel a hot gush on either side of my head, followed by a trickle warmth down my neck and collarbone. I couldn't have even had the comfort of hearing myself scream. Passing out was a mercy. The last thought I remember having before I blacked out still stands out to me, clearer than the memory itself. Was I not worth fighting harder for? It's still a question I find myself asking, even after all this time. I've only worked one other retail job before this. It was a dodgy corner store that made most of its cash from liquor sales, cigarettes, and cheap imported knickknacks for tourists. I lasted a week, but that job doesn't even hold a candle to the fuck shit I have had to deal with here. The page had started and ended again, but now, filling the silence was pain. Blinding pain, and an intense, high-pitched, constant ringing. I couldn't remember when my eyes opened again, but I found myself laying on my side in a small and cold, slightly coagulated puddle of blood. I had been lying there, staring at the white tile that stretched for miles into the dark in one direction. The thing pretending to be my dad was nowhere to be seen, and though he didn't have the opportunity to blow my head off, the pounding migraine I now had felt like it would finish the job. I peeled myself off the floor, and my eyes took their sweet time adjusting to a very differently lit place I found myself in. The ground was level again, and the shelves were their normally straight and stupidly tall selves. Where am I? My voice was muffled like I was hearing my own voice through a wall. There was a thin trail of what I could only assume to be my blood, leading back to a lone clothing rack full of ugly sweaters. I wanted to investigate, but something about having your eardrums popped like flesh balloons really takes the curiosity out of you. My head felt heavy, and my limbs hung from their joints like lead pipes as I tried to regain my bearings. By some random intervention of God or the devil or whatever forces are at work here that either decided to cut me a break or deliver me right to the doorstep of my untimely demise, I was standing right under the garden and live good sign. The smell here was... The air was different. It was swampy. It was noticeably unique from the other areas I visited. The pungent odor of decaying plant matter, wet soil and humidity slapped me in the face like a swampy Louisiana morning. There were vines on the floor as thick as a man's thigh, and I could have sworn they were moving and twitching slightly. Off in the distance I could see a pair of automatic sliding doors. Beyond them was a dark, viridian shadow. I found myself reconsidering again if I really could live without my phone or not. I could just find a sack of cloths to sit under until my shift finished. It would be so easy. I could probably even fall asleep. How wonderful would it be if this was all just a nightmare? I took a moment to follow that thought. How weird would it be to set up a therapy appointment from a payphone? Is that a red flag? I feel like that would be kind of a red flag. Max, buddy, you made it! I knew you could do it! I turned to see Fred, armless and sprinting from out of nowhere towards me. He was wearing a sun hat and a bright blue polo with empty sleeves flopping in the wind. I was so worried your head had exploded already. Did you get my message from Janice? I slapped him so hard. His head spun, like it literally spun. I almost spun it off his plastic neck. Are you fucking serious? You left me walking around aimlessly on my own in this place. Give me my goddamn phone before I take your legs too. He was completely unfazed, his head continuing to spin as he spoke. Okay, I know you're mad, but do you mind? I begrudgingly stopped his head from spinning and turned it to face me. I didn't know how else to get you motivated to come with me to garden to use their phone. No offense, but you're kinda stubborn. Fred, yeah? I pinched the bridge of my nose. I could feel the throbbing in my head, pulsing in my sinuses and teeth. Part of me wondered if it was a tension headache from how irritated I was, or if it could have something to do with the air nuke I just received. I looked back at Fred's stupid smiling face and took a deep, deep breath. Max, don't dismember your only lifeline. It's not worth it. I addressed him in the way one would talk to a dog that was too dumb to understand why it wasn't okay to pee in the house. If you told me the page was going to increase in volume to the point it could kill me, I would have gladly come with you. Oh, for real? Yes. Ah, Maxie, I didn't think you trusted me that much already. Hug? No. Your opportunity for a hug left when you stole my phone. I turned and started to head towards the doors. I kicked the vines out of the way as I walked. I was fed up and just wanted whatever little shop of horrors nonsense I would have to deal with next to be over. I could hear Fred trailing close behind me and continuing his chatter, but it was so much harder to hear him now. I'll definitely have to go to the doctors for this. God, the bill is going to suck. I guess the $20 an hour is worth something, as shitty as the situation is. Max! I think I'll order a bunch of food when I get home, with ice cream. Hey, Max! Ice cream and my nice warm bed. Max! What? Help! I spun towards the plastic pain in my ass and threw my hands in the air. What? What the hell could you possibly need my help with? Oh my god! The stupid vines had picked up Fred and were now pulling him apart, one of his legs coming free with a pop. Hey, Vines! Off the legs, pal. You ain't even offered me dinner yet. Well, what do I do? Well, if a scenario wherein you're being or in this case, mannequin handled by a co-worker in a way you don't like should arise, you should go to HR. Theta-mart can let a little bit of murder slide, but definitely not. A final pop, and the last of Fred's appendages were gone. As much as I would like to say I leaped into action to save him, hacking and slashing the vines away, and got Fred's legs back, I didn't. In fact, I couldn't even bring myself to feel all that bad. It was only a matter of time before the page sounded again and popped my head like a meaty gusher. I'm pretty sure after that I wouldn't really need my ears anymore. I don't have time for this. The vines lifted Fred higher into the air, him never stopping to take a breath as he began to beg and plead, which was surprising. Max, buddy, you're gonna help me out. No, I'm gonna go answer the phone. Fred made a sound similar to a plastic clothing tag being taken off his shirt. I couldn't tell how I know, but it was the mannequin equivalent of a whine. Ah, come on, man. I'll come back for you. If I remember, though. Not cool, dude. Not cool. Just when I thought the plant, for whatever reason, had no interest in me, I felt a vine very quickly slink up my pants leg and climb much higher than I appreciated. Fred was right. This plant was a little too touchy. I could only let out a squeak before it quickly yanked my leg out from underneath me. I fell forward, the full weight of my body falling on my chest. I could see something passing back and forth behind the doors, which implied that 1, it was big, and 2, it was waiting for us. The vines, as though they noticed the shape when I did, began dragging us both towards the door. My face made hard contact with the tile and undoubtedly gave me a hell of a shiner on my cheek. I dug my nails into the ridges in the floor, but to no avail. It only took about 10 seconds for us to clear the almost football field length between us and the doors to the garden and live goods. The smell of swamp hit me with about the same force as the vine slingshotting me and Fred's torso down the soil aisle. The air was hot and wet, water dripped from the shelves, and there was a noticeable fog that had settled on the floor. The place was a jungle, and if I hadn't been tossed around or deafened, I probably would have thought this place was pretty cool. Would have been the key word. Fred's eyeballs began to dart around their sockets, his head moving from left to right on the axis of his neck. Oh man, oh shit. I laid on the floor for a minute, just staring at the cascading vines for just a bit longer before they started pulling me to pieces too. Fred was notably not as impressed. He wiggled and wobbled, trying to turn over on his side. This was not a good plan. Bad plan. We gotta get out of here. Why? Are you scared? If the pager goes off again, I'm toast. Extra frickin' crispy. I'm not supposed to be here. I owe the garden manager big time. Owe them what? If Fred had nails or a mouth, or hands for that matter, he would have been biting them. I lost a game of Uno to them, and I still haven't paid what I owe. That sounds like a you problem. For the second time in less than 5 minutes, I peeled myself off the floor and took one last moment to admire the plants around me. They were so strange and bright. I had never seen plants like these. I wonder if anyone would notice if I took one of the small ones home. Max, hold up. Oh, before I forget. I walk over to Fred, reach into his legging pants pocket, and grab my phone. To my dismay, the idiot had cracked my screen. That made it all the easier to leave him there, armless, legless, and yelling. Serves him right. I walked up and down the aisles, trying to get some inclination on where in the department I was. But this place, like the rest of the store, was absolutely gargantuan. The dense foliage consisted of trees as thick as Greek pillars, shrubbery with leaves as large as tables, and hypnotically coloured flowers, some of which sprayed you in the face. I made the mistake of trying to pick up a purple one that smelled like Listerine mouthwash. A carpet of soft moss blanketed over most of the floor, where only every few yards was the tile underneath visible. I'd be lying if I didn't say, as strange as the plants in here were, something in here put me at ease. It felt as though it were welcoming me to sit, to sleep, to stay. No, I have to answer that damn phone. I have to stay focused. I can't keep wasting time and walking around aimlessly. Maybe leaving Fred behind wasn't the best idea. I managed to find a shelf-like structure buried beneath vines, moss, and branches. I took a deep breath and began scaling it as quickly as I could manage. I had to see where exactly I was and pray, wherever or whatever the manager was, it didn't spot me piddling around up there. I peeked over the top, feeling brave, and then climbed all the way up. I sat atop of the shelf, getting a full view. It was breathtaking. The entire department was a lush rainforest. Overhead, above the canopy, actual clouds formed. I couldn't help but speak out aloud a quiet, "Whoa." Maybe this is why Janice likes loitering on top of the shelves. I can't imagine home and decor looking this amazing, though. As I began to be lulled once more by the surroundings, I saw a head peek at me from the shelf on the other side of the aisles from me. A head with thick, auburn spirals and some of the greenest eyes I had ever seen. It seemed they saw me before I saw them, and they were locked on me. They appeared apprehensive of my presence. Hi," I said with a wave. The top half of the head was thankfully attached to a girl. She pulled herself up to the top of the adjacent shelf. She was pretty. really pretty. She wore a long dark green skirt, from what I could tell, a well-loved Led Zeppelin t-shirt, peeking out from over the top lip of her white and green stained apron, with a pair of combat boots. She eyed me inquisitively and said something. I could only gesture to my ears and respond, I can't hear you. Sorry. She wrinkled her nose, then began digging in her apron pocket and producing a notebook and pen. She scribbled something, then proceeded to crumble up the paper into a small ball and throw it across the gap between us. She had a throwing arm to rival Fred's, and the little ball landed in my lap. I carefully unfolded the slightly damp paper to read the message in flowery handwriting. Are you Max? My chest tightened with anxiety. Tell the pretty and mysterious girl my name and break rule 1, or lie and hope it doesn't come back to bite me. I smiled and nodded my head like a dope. She returned my smile and made the phone gesture with her hand, holding it up to her ear. I nodded and smiled again, mimicking the gesture. Oh, thank God, she knows where the phone is. I pulled out my own pen and scribbled on the other side of the paper. What's your name? Might as well even out the playing field. And tossed it to her. She opened it, smiling wider this time, dimples appearing in her cheeks as she wrote her response and tossed the ball back to me. This might be the strangest game of catch I had ever played. Anna Odi, the note said. She wrote another and tossed it at me. It read, What happened to your ears? I answered, Popped 'em. Gotta go answer the page. I paused for a moment and quickly gestured for the paperback. She tossed it back to me and I added, Your ears aren't damaged? I returned it and she responded by pulling a pair of scruffed up AirPods out of her pocket with a shy smirk. Ah, good old sound cancelling. There was something about her that made the quiet suggestion to stay a while longer grow in intensity. She began to climb down, gesturing for me to follow, and I did so without missing a beat. When I reached the bottom, the fog seemed so much thicker. It carried a strange, sweet smell. It only came up to the knee, thankfully, but it was so dense I couldn't see my feet. A gentle tap on my shoulder caused me to flinch and nearly reach for my box cutter. Anna held up her hand, smirking at me. Got ya. I couldn't hear her voice, so I read her lips instead. I guess my ears were more messed up than I initially thought. I tried to relax and shrugged. You got me, I said. Anna began digging in her pocket once again, but this time producing a fist-sized flower pot. It looked incredibly similar to Zingiberisi, or the shampoo plant, but it was a vibrant electric blue and smelled like licorice root with molasses. She held it up and tilted her head. Tilt your head like this. It'll help your ears. I didn't argue and did as she said. Something about her was just so disarming. I tilted my head. She gently put one hand under my chin. With the other, she held the pot above my ears. I heard a faint squish followed by an uncomfortable sensation of syrup being poured into my ear canal. My face contorted in the way that made her giggle. At least she's having fun. What was strange, though, Her voice sounded like the quiet chirping of a broken bird. This time, when she spoke again, still no sound came from her. Either I was permanently deaf, she was mute, or there was something else at play. Either way, I was faced with a new issue now. I couldn't understand my guide, and I'm horrible at lip reading. "Alright, Dopey. Now the other one." She mouthed as though she had no idea there was a huge communication barrier between us. She took me by the chin, gently tilting my head to the other side. She squeezed the pod once more, and it felt even worse going into my ear the second time. I couldn't help but stare and study her face for any signs of something. Her eyes met mine again, and she beamed. "Better?" she mouthed. My migraine and the throbbing in my ears were quickly evaporating, so the flower juice did something. But I also found myself in the introvert dilemma. You go through a drive-through and ask for no pickles, to only receive them in your sandwich and be too awkward to go back and ask them to fix it for you. She was nice enough to even try. I didn't want to be a bother. I'll just deal, I guess. "Yeah, thank you." She clapped. I heard that, or I think I did. "Good," she said, as well as a bunch of other things I couldn't really make out. She spoke quickly and I was only able to pick up something about flower food. She disappeared into the next aisle and I followed close behind her. I really hope we weren't taking a detour. I am running out of time. Every few steps I nearly tripped over vines and whatever lay beneath the fog. Every time I did, she glanced at me from over her shoulder. "Careful," she'd say. "Yeah, sorry." I could hear my voice through the syrup, the vicious nectar, making it sound like I was underwater. I tried to keep pace with her as we walked and resist the urge to try digging the now quickly drying flower gunk in my ears. By then, I should have just kept my mouth shut, but I can't stand awkward silence, and now, despite not being able to hear it, I could still feel it. Not to mention, on top of being a horrible lip reader, I suck at talking to girls. "So, how long have you been here?" I hoped she wouldn't notice me staring at her lips to understand what she was saying. I was becoming hyper-aware of what I was looking at, which was probably what made it even worse. "What do you mean?" She was now staring back at me, which made me stare even harder at her. "Damn it, Max, blink. Stop being weird." In the ThetaMart. In garden." "Oh." She began to fidget with her skirt. "I have no idea how long it's been. I'm sure you know how time works. A little funky here." I do, unfortunately. This is the hardest conversation I've ever had. Am I really that out of touch with talking to people? Seriously, I need to get out more. Anna continued to talk, completely unfazed by our unspoken staring contest. She didn't take her eyes off me once. It was like she was so familiar with this place she didn't even need to look where she was going. I couldn't help but wonder what that was like, to be so sure of anything. By then, I had already missed half of her sentence. "Days or weeks, and neither of us would know until our shifts are over." "Oh yeah, but Aren't you even a little bit concerned that you don't know how long you've been here? She gave me a strange look, which told me I had almost certainly missed a social cue. Well, typically, people who want to go home are people who either have someone they miss at home or their home is better than where they are now. Neither of those apply to me. Plus, I'm getting something. I missed that part. And to top it all off, I think I found another reason to like it here. I felt her hand brush against mine and nearly leaped out of my skin. Yeah. The only thing I could hear now was my heart thumping in my eyes. Do you have someone you miss, Max? Someone waiting for you? Me? No, not really. I'm half convinced that if I vanish, my family would be relieved. I paused. Sorry, that was a little dark. Anna traced my knuckles with her pinky finger before wrapping her hand around my own. The wash of pity on her face finally forced me to break and look away. She gently tugged on my earlobe. I looked at her again, being faced with the deep pools of striking emerald. It was like lightning to the soul. No, that's how you feel, and if that's the case, they aren't your family, your real family. I shrugged. I sort of wanted the conversation to end there. I was starting to feel heavy, and it was becoming so much harder to decipher what she was saying. But Anna kept going. Is that really how you feel, Max? Her hands trailed up my arm and leaned her head on my shoulders as we walked. She continued staring up at me, never once looking away, her eyes practically piercing into me. The longer I looked into her eyes, the harder it got to keep moving, to keep wanting to move, to blink, to speak. I couldn't bring myself to respond anymore. I just nodded my head, bobbing like a bowling ball. Then stay here with me. I'll make sure you never feel lonely, only loved. Whoa, wait a second. That's a little forward. It's what you need. You belong here. I don't think either of us are ready for that level of commitment. I'm still in college. Her grip tightened. Anna was a lot stronger than she looked. Oh no. It's okay. We'll learn together. Something, forever. As sweet as that might sound, I think several months down the line, I really can't stay here. But you can. I can make it so easy. She stopped us and put her hands on my cheek. That little voice in my head telling me to stay was much louder now. It wasn't mine. Look at me, Max. Don't you want to stay? I was transfixed. She held me there in her gaze. I was trapped. Her eyes were pulsing now, different shades of green, infinite mandalas of spiral, coalescing and folding in on themselves like beautiful stained glass mosaics. They were every shade of green imaginable. Being this close to her, she smelled like honeysuckle and hyacinth. Stay with me. I can't. I don't want. I remembered the soft bed of moss beneath me. Chills running up and down my body in waves. I was so tired, I almost wished she would turn me to stone with those eyes. Anything if it meant I could rest unbothered forever. My brain re-registering how blissfully peaceful it was here. How easy it would be just to stay. It was such a comfortable idea. I closed my heavy eyelids as Anna planted a kiss on my lips. Even to acknowledge the sensation of touch was too much energy. It burned and tasted like poison, but I gave in. My only reward was the world around me finally being plunged into inviting, quiet black. Consciousness came to me in waves. Strange sensations and sounds piqued my curiosity, but not enough to shake me from my stupor. At least that was the case until I felt hot stinging on my backside. My eyes shot open, my body ached, and my skin was tingling. It can't be good. My vision slowly came back into focus, and I realized I was sitting inside a giant pitcher plant. I was submerged up to the neck in a translucent green syrupy liquid that was doing God knows what to me. My entire body felt slightly numb but slightly warm. It was like being in an ogre's mouth. It was gross, and I hated it. "Good morning, Sleeping Beauty," Anna said, sitting on top of one of the pitchers beside me, like a hipster grudge version of Mary Poppins. I could hear her now. Her voice was clear as a bell, but it sounded slightly distorted, as though she were speaking through a walkie-talkie that got dropped in the toilet. My relief gave way to confusion, then annoyance. "You ever heard of the term no means no? And why do you sound like that?" "Not being able to understand you was getting to be a chore, so I decided to assimilate you." "Wait, what? Dude, look, I don't know what plant yonder hoodoo you used on me, but I literally just want to answer the phone and get out of here. Like, I get you're probably super lonely in here, but I'm not the guy you want. I've got more issues than a Stephen King character." I heard a snort and a scream laugh from a bundle of vines below me. "Ha! Yonder hoodoo. Good one." Fred. Of course. This mannequin was quickly becoming about as consistent and enjoyable as herpes. I would have jumped if I hadn't already known Fred was 4 legs short of a full mannequin and 1 brain cell short of having any semblance of common sense or even a plan. "Shut up, Fred. And don't worry, Max. All of your issues and pain will melt away very soon." That's what you think. Either way, you won't be happy cleaning me or my issues out of your people slurping pod when the pager goes off again and my head explodes. Anna frowned and floated over to me, a thick vine connecting to her lower back, suspending her in the air. "By the time the pager goes off again, it won't affect you. After all, plants love sound. It stimulates growth." I couldn't help but think about just how super weird that was. "It's only weird if you make it weird, Max." "Nope, it's super duper mega weird," Fred chimed in with, "It's pretty weird." Whoa, are you reading my mind? I get the eating me thing, but stay out of my head. That's definitely crossing a boundary. Unplug me from your plant Wi-Fi. "I'm not gonna eat you, stupid. Why does everyone think... Never mind. Now, shut up and sit tight. You're Off-brand Barbie owes us an MP3. Fred shouted from below. Barbie wishes she had my moxie. She shut the lid on my picture and floated off. The picture itself was see-through like glass with the texture of celery. As strange as that sounds, to make matters worse, it was filling up with more of that gross plant juice, and that burn at the base of my spine began to build in intensity. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes tight as the plant soup cleared the top of my head. My brain began firing thoughts off like bullets from a gun. Shit. I suck at holding my breath. I can't hold it forever. Oh God, that really hurts. This is what it feels like before I was born? No, don't think about that. Focus, Max, focus. I did what no one in my situation should ever do, and opened my eyes again. Opening your eyes in a giant carnivorous flower juice should melt your eyes on contact, but to my surprise, that didn't happen. I began digging into my apron pocket. I pulled out my box cutter and made quick work of the plant flesh. I cut a hatch-sized square and kicked it out of place. I didn't really think that one through. The juice spilled out and took me with it. I slipped out of the pitcher, realizing I was many feet off the ground and falling. This must be what it feels like to be a newborn giraffe. I fell about 10 feet before being jerked by the tender spot, which now was connected by a glowing vine thing doing probably nothing good. It came free with a sickening noise and kept some of my skin as a souvenir. The burning increased tenfold. I heard a loud scream in my head, and from everywhere around me, I was left plummeting the rest of the way, screaming with whatever I was hearing and holding the space above my ass crack. Not one of my proudest moments.